afternoon and good morning for some of you who are joining us virtually. The time is 3 p.m. now, so I'd like to start today's session. Again, good afternoon and good morning. My name is Hwajin Kim, and I'll be your MC today. Welcome, and thank you all for participating in UNITAR Jeju International Training Center's International Capacity Building Workshop on the Building Carbon Neutral Society for Our Common Future, the Role of Mobility in Times of Transition. This workshop is held as part of the 9th International Electric Vehicle Expo, and today's session is also live streamed on YouTube. The workshop is organized both in person and virtually, and here in Jeju, we have some domestic participants as well as our special guest speaker. I'd like to introduce our guest speakers. From my left, Dr. Hoong-gil Lee, Head of Global Transport Cooperation Center at Korea Transport Institute. Next, we have Mr. Soo-jin Kim, Transportation Senior Specialist at Seoul Urban Solutions Agency. Next, we have Mr. Chang Sun-jang, Transport and Sustainable Mobility Lead at Global Green Growth Institute. And last but not least, Ms. Jasmine Kim, Program Manager at East Asia Clean Air Cities Network. Before we officially open the session, I'd like to play a short video clip. Let us have a look. We have prepared a video clip, so whenever the video is ready.
UNITAR CFAL Jeju International Training Center was established in 2010 through an agreement between the United Nations Institute for Training and Research, Jeju Special Self-Governing Province, and the International Peace Foundation. Along with the Jeju Peace Institute, CFAL Jeju serves as one of the subsidiary organizations of the International Peace Foundation, which itself was established in 2005. Together, CFAL Jeju helps support Jeju Province in its effort to enhance peace and security in East Asia. As one of the leading global CFAL centers affiliated with the UN Institute for Training and Research, CFAL Jeju's main mission is to provide government authorities and civil society leaders in the Asia-Pacific region with a platform to exchange strategies, tools, and best practices. In this way, CFAL Jeju can help local governments achieve their sustainable development goals through various capacity-building training programs. Since our first training workshop in 2010, CFAL Jeju has implemented a wide range of domestic and international programs. These include international capacity building workshops on social inclusion, economic development, environmental sustainability, and other issues, along with expert seminars, youth engagement, and global citizenship education programs. Over the years, we have developed and touched upon a wide range of thematic areas, such as a social protection series for vulnerable groups, smart mobility, green transition, digital transformation, social entrepreneurship, and a results-based M&E system. CFAL Jeju has been at the forefront of knowledge sharing for in-depth city-to-city and country-to-country cooperation. We have also strengthened partnerships with UNITAR, other UN agencies and CFAL centers, academia, and various organizations to maintain the quality of our training programs. As one of the leading training centers in the Asia-Pacific region, we will continue to serve as a catalyst to inspire local actors in the region to foster sustainable development at the local and national levels.
As you have seen from the video, Unitar Jeju International Training Center has been providing a distinctive and diverse range of programs online and offline. Today, the head of Jeju International Training Center is also here with us. It is my great honor to invite Director Hong Gi-choi for an opening remark. Director Hong Gi-choi was a former ambassador to Turkey and also served as ambassador to Jordan. And he's stationed in many other parts of the world, including New York, Ethiopia, and Austria. Director Choi, you have the floor.
Thank you, dear distinguished speakers and our participants. Good afternoon. Welcome to Jeju, and thank you for joining us online from your home country. I'm Hong Gi-choi, Director of Unitar Jeju, C8 Jeju and Jeju International Training Center. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to this workshop on building carbon-neutral society for our common future, the role of mobility in times of transition. This workshop was put together with the support and cooperation of the East Asia Clean Air City Network and the Korea Transport Institute. Thank you for the collaborative effort. Also, this workshop is organized as part of the 9th International Electric Vehicle Expo conference. I'm very pleased to express my excitement for this continued partnership between Unitar C8 Jeju and Jeju International Electric Vehicle Expo. As you can see from the title of this workshop, going carbon neutral is called for to turn our future truly sustainable. Here in Korea, the government enacted the Framework Act on Carbon Neutrality and Green Growth to cope with the climate crisis last year. As the law stipulates climate change to be incorporated across the national planning of policy, budget, and project, industries are going to face new challenges and changes. Transportation sector, as the second largest carbon emitter, will be no exception. Therefore, I believe this workshop can provide a timely and unique platform with a topic that captures the urgency of the issue and the importance of our collective action. The sessions today and Friday will invite 4 experts who will introduce the importance of the role of mobility in zeroing carbon emission, the mobility trends reflected in global investment flows, core benefits, and core control in the transport sector, and on-the-ground case presentations. I strongly hope that you can seize the opportunity to acquire new information, develop practical knowledge, and build a cooperative network from Unitar C8 Jeju workshop. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Director Che. With the inspiring words and promising support, I think we are ready to kick off the session. This workshop already had its pre-session on April 22nd on Earth Day. During the session, we had an opportunity to meet Ms. Beatrice Chang from ICLEI East Asian Secretariat. She presented us an eco-mobility initiative of Kaohsiung City, and we realized that behind this successful initiative, there were 3 to 4 years of struggles to persuade and engage the citizen, upgrade the necessary infrastructure, and keep the political leadership despite the government reshuffle. And today we will have another opportunity to listen to 3 presentations and a panel discussion of 4 speakers. They will further explain and introduce a wide range of potential and trends in the transportation sector. As the global race to carbon neutrality has started, I believe what we learn and discuss today will definitely empower us as individuals and the society that we live in. Then let us begin our first presentation. Dr. Hoong-Gil Lee from the Korean Transport Institute. I will now invite you to the podium.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I am Hoong-Gil Lee, working for the Korea Transport Institute. Basically, they're belonging to government sector and they provide the technical assistance to government. So this is the second time to participate in this event. So I realized big difference between last year and this year. Last year, they provided their Korean English translation, but this time it is not allowed to. So it's a little bit difficult to deliver my message, but I will do my best for my presentation. So today, I will make a presentation with the topic, the role of mobility toward carbon neutrality in Korea. So basically, we in the Korea Transport Institute, they analyzed the various scenarios regarding the carbon neutral society, but the result are a little bit sensitive, and that's why the analysis result are confidential. So today I will just explain about the general direction for the carbon neutral society, focusing on transport sector. So from my presentation, I'd like to mention how the climate change would have an impact on this world briefly. And second, what Korea net zero policy and scenarios are like. Finally, what net zero policy options should be taken in transport sector. Okay, I wonder whether there are some participants joining from Indonesia. So a while ago in Indonesia, some houses along the coast were flooded due to a sea level rise. Regarding this incident, U.S. President said like this: the sea level rise is not a problem of only a country, but just part of climate change caused by carbon emissions. So he also highlighted a worldwide response to the climate crisis. So as a lot of disasters have been triggered by the climate crisis, frequently and repeatedly, there is a rising concern about the climate change. Such climate disasters affect our lives in various ways, and it is time all the countries should make effort to take right actions to address the climate crisis. So looking at the data on the changes in the global temperatures, you can see how rapidly global warming has been progressing. With the global warming, the climate crisis is expected to progress faster and make the situation worse in the future. So all the efforts should be put in to respond to this issue. So climate change has brought about a lot of damages, and they have affected human lives and the economy. Their consequent damages are placed at a very serious level. We need to take the right and right actions to solve these issues. So as you know, the humans' artificial carbon emissions are the main cause of global warming. So among them, the transport sector is being chosen as a representative source of carbon emissions. The green gases emitted from transport sector around the world account for about 23% of the total greenhouse emissions. So particularly substantial greenhouse gas emissions in transport sector result from ICE vehicles of road transport. The Korean status of greenhouse gas emissions is not different from the global trend. About the 13% of the total greenhouse gas emissions is coming from the transport sector. The emissions in transport sector had continuously grown, but recently tend to be stagnant in Korea. So as of 2019, the greatest global carbon emissions were generated from China, and followed by US, India, and Russia. So Republic of Korea ranked at 9th in the global community. So particularly top 3 countries, the China, US, India, top 3 countries' emissions account for more than half of the total greenhouse gas emissions. This implies that if countries around the world do not join in the effort of reduce carbon emissions, we can face serious situation in the future due to the climate change. So we need to reduce carbon emissions. So there are strategies and some actions to reduce the emissions. So they can be summarized into the 4 pillars. The first, energy saving and efficiency. So energy usage should be reduced as much as possible in industrial sector, building, and transport sectors. Second, the zero carbon energy supply. So electric power should be generated with renewable energy. The third, the greenhouse gas should be better absorbed by natural carbon sink and be removed through the carbon capture, usage, and the storage technology. Finally, last, the high carbon industry. The high carbon industry should be replaced with low carbon energy and the low carbon materials. So we can summarize the net zero strategy, reduce the carbon, greenhouse carbon emissions. So first, the strategy action is energy demand management. So power generating and the industrial sectors should make use of renewable energy and suppress the coal power generation and reinforce carbon cost. In the construction sector, it is important to redesign existing building and reinforce the energy efficiency regulation for new buildings. Also in the transport sector, it is necessary to increase zero carbon vehicles and reinforce regulation on greenhouse gas emissions. The second strategy action is energy supply management. So also it is necessary to prepare a system for renewable energy dispersion and the supplementation of the relevant system. Investment should be made to strengthen the network for large-scale renewable energy interface, and the relevant system should be improved. Besides, the electricity wholesale market needs to be normalized by introducing real-time markets and the supplementary service markets. And the third action is the high carbon industry. So basically, we need to support the development of innovative technologies, such as CCUS, the carbon capture, utilization and storage technology. Also, carbon should be priced and incorporated into the production cost. The first action is the handling, non-technical plan. So this can be said nature-based solution and can be alternative solution for the high carbon industry through making circular economy. So recently, the Korean government published net zero 2050 scenarios. They are basically composed of two scenarios. The first scenario was set on the assumption of minimizing the greenhouse gas emissions. Their scenario B was set under the assumption of utilizing absorption technology. So the first scenario is expected to emit 84 million tons of greenhouse gas in 2050. And the second scenario is estimated to emit 120 million tons. So the focusing the transport sector, the greenhouse gas is emitted in scenario 2, compared to scenario 1. The why, this reason will be explained in next slide. So as shown in this slide, the greenhouse gas emissions in the transport sector are about 100 million tons, and they are mainly caused from the cars, buses, and the trucks of the road transport. The share of the petroleum products, such as gasoline and the diesel, reaches about 90% of the total energy usage. So considering these aspects, the effective mitigation strategies to shift from the ICE vehicle to electric vehicles or hydrogen vehicles. So Korean government estimated the number of the registered cars will reach about 29 million in 2040. In the scenario 1, it assumed that eco-friendly vehicles will increase up to 97% in 2050, which is much higher than about 29% in 2030. So as shown in this figure, the Korean government is thought to take active actions there, in order to increase the use of zero-emission vehicles. So the Korean government's net zero implementation strategies for the transport sector, they are summarized shown in this slide. The first, transition to future mobility. So second, accelerate energy transition. The third, the promoting the new future promising industry, and the establishing the base of innovative ecosystem, the activating the circular economy. So among these tasks, among these actions, so I'd like to explain about the transition to future mobility and the promoting new future promising industry in detail. So here is the transition to future mobility. So in the future mobility, basically electricity transition, there was taken in order to increase the use of electric vehicles and hydrogen vehicles in the future. Especially, they should be organized and synchronized with the autonomous vehicles and the sharing the economy. So combination of the zero emission vehicles and the autonomous vehicles and the sharing economy can contribute the reduced traffic congestion, the increased energy efficiency, and the reduced vehicle demand. So in the future mobility, it is very important how to integrate the electric vehicle and the hydrogen vehicle with autonomous vehicle system and the sharing economy. And the foster new promising industry. So this action is closely related to job creation. So by fostering new promising industries, we can expect to have more jobs and to create more jobs through their promising industry-related technologies. For example, the electric and hydrogen vehicle, and the battery recycling and charging infrastructure. So by making the use of these kind of technology, we can expect to have more jobs and create more jobs in the future. So focusing on the future mobility, also we have to think about the three pillars. The first one is technological innovation. So technological innovation is how to expand the supply of the eco-friendly vehicles and the advanced technology. And the second one is ecosystem innovation, in order to secure the stable supply chain for the future mobility. And the government's institutional innovation, especially in order to create an efficient electric vehicle charging business accurate system. So step by step, I will explain about these pillars. So technological innovation. So in Korea now, the providing the financial, the subsidy, when the people they purchase battery and the electric vehicle and hydrogen vehicles, and also the when the infrastructure construction is done. So regarding these issues, we have to think about in the future. We have to continue the financial investment where we have to provide their subsidy to their electric vehicle users. So in developing countries, especially, they don't have their financing, they don't have funding to provide the subsidy to electric vehicle users. So the financial investment and the financial system is a very crucial factor to increase the use of the zero emission vehicles. And also we have to think about circular ecosystem. For example, especially we have to think of the waste batteries, how to use the waste batteries. And they make technology, the process, in order to make technology progressive, so also the research, development, and the demonstration should be done in order to develop new low carbon technologies and spread the market in the future. So ecosystem innovation. Also, regarding these issues, we have to also consider the government-led R&D project and the operation of data centers and infrastructure, and the joint research development and the establishment of the support center. Especially human research training is a very important factor. And the government institutional the innovation. So as I mentioned earlier, so the subsidy and taxation is very important factor when we think about the zero emission vehicles. So especially, as I mentioned, we analyzed the various scenarios regarding the taxation, because when we impose the more taxation on the ICE vehicles, the users tend to shift from the ICE vehicles to the zero emission vehicles. So it is necessary to the taxation level. So we analyzed the various scenarios, and we provide the recommendation, taxation recommendation to the government. And the charging station. So also, in order to the increased use of the electric vehicle, basically we have to construct the charging station. So also the select. We need to select and support supply location of charging station, and how many subsidy should be provided to charging station. Regarding this issue, we have to think about that. So finally, in transport sector, and in order to make the carbon neutrality, we have to think about and consider the following factors. The first, the production and supply of eco-friendly vehicles. So second, the enough renewable energy could be supplied. In the future, as the number of the electric vehicles, the increase, we have to think about that we have enough the renewable energy. And the third is charging infrastructure and the technology development and subsidy for transition and the taxation and the financing for transport system. So this is the main issues when you think about the transport sector. Maybe later we have time to discuss about these issues. Thank you for your listening.
Thank you, Dr. Lee, for the thoughtful and thorough research presentation. You mentioned that global warming accelerates the climate change, and you also introduced the net zero scenario of Korean government, that by 2030, 33% of total sales of cars should be electric vehicles or hydrogen vehicles, and by 2050, 93% of all cars will be carbon-free or eco-friendly. Thank you again, and I will now invite Mr. Soo-jin Kim, Transportation Senior Specialist at Seoul Urban Solutions Agency, to the podium. He will present options to improve public transportation with cases of Seoul City. We will have a Q&A session after the third speaker.
Hello, it's a pleasure to meet. It's an honor to meet such a distinguished group of members. My name is Soo-jin Kim. I work at Seoul Urban Solutions Agency as a transportation specialist. Today, my presentation topic is renovation of a public transportation sector. My presentation consists of 4 categories. Before I dive into my presentation, there is one thing that I would say. Seoul have been going on in many activities for carbon neutral, including pedestrianized walking street, activation of non-motorized transportation, expansion of the green zone project, and so on. Among them, the reason why I choose the public transportation sector as a presentation topic is that the ripple effect for carbon neutral is relatively larger than other policies. So I hope that my presentation is relevant for today's workshop topic and useful to you. First, it's a status of public transportation, including informal transportation. According to Union International Transport Publics, informal transportation have been serving many cities as an important mode of transportation. However, it operates under low governance and maintenance levels due to either low political will or the difficulty in gathering many informal actors to set up proper financial mechanisms. This picture is a scenery of Seoul in 1960s. back in 1963, the city of Seoul had many narrow streets which were used primarily for the transport of essential goods, such as rice and coal briquettes, as well as a collection of garbage. The city even had many three-wheeled vehicles running on the highways. This led to many vehicles involved in collisions and capsizings, not to mention the loss of human lives. So naturally, the city became developed and expanded. Such vehicles were eliminated by the 1980s. If you look at this chart, since the 1970s, the subway started. Because of this, from 1980s, buses continued to decrease while subways and passenger cars began to increase. The bus company felt a crisis, and some companies went bankrupt, be acquired or merged. So in order to overcome this crisis, Seoul had to come up with new idea and solutions. This graph is modal split rate per year in Seoul. Subway is the most high, next to bus, next to passenger car. But then the most remarkable thing is that is coexisting bus and subway. Buses and subways have coexisted in Seoul over the past several decades, and the current share of passenger cars has remained less than 26%. In fact, I think that the 5 major measures in Seoul's competitiveness in the public transportation sector is that Seoul have been making a move, the following measures, step by step, very closely and organically. This slide explains semi-public system. In establishing the semi-public management structure, the right to set bus route was taken over by the city of Seoul beginning in 2004. Instead of that, Seoul Metropolitan Government have been providing subsidies to bus companies incurring income deficits as a result of this management structure. At that time, bus company considered bus routes as a sort of a patent or franchise. So they were so much sensitive and nervous for competitive routes. Bus company or operators, they just only wanted to operate the profitable routes. Seoul tried to break bus companies' will at all costs. At last, Seoul came up with a semi-public management. Since starting the semi-public system in 2004, Seoul Metropolitan Government, armed with its right to set bus routes, rearranged the routes based upon the hub and spoke system. The bus routes were divided into 4 categories depending on the route's special qualities and functions. They are interregional, trunk, feeder, and circular. Within these 4 categories, there is one more, the Maul bus. It is one of the feeder line is at the bottom of a hierarchy. And as of yet, mile bus operators are not included in the semi-public system. So with the COVID-19 pandemic, the mile bus operators had incurred heavy losses of income, and they shut down operation once in last year. Second, within the city of Seoul and metropolitan area, the public can access all modes of transportation using one singular card T-money. It also allows for discounted rates when people transfer between from routes from mode other to other mode. This is a bus information system and bus management system. Seoul Metropolitan Government currently provide information on a bus's real-time location and expected arrival time via bus information terminal with public transit users. There is a TOPIS system. TOPIS means Total Integrated Combined Transportation System Center. TOPIS system have always been monitoring each bus's real-time location and headway. So one bus, if one bus break away his own routes, the center directly call to driver. Seoul Metropolitan Government is operating the bus rapid transit lanes that gives a priority passage to buses. Currently, the bus stops themselves have been modernized and fitted with technology in order to provide ease of use to the citizens, as well as the increase of public transportation usage. Public transit users can access free Wi-Fi, and they can avoid the heat and cold by an air conditioner. A few lanes have been converted to garages where bus operators pay rent to the city to conduct service maintenance, charging, car washes, and parking. The supply rates of electric buses in Seoul are 4.3% as of 2020. But in fact, although more electric buses can be supplied, we have to consider the market. So the market for CNG bus, compressed natural gas buses, they have to be protected by Seoul. Plus, because electric bus prices are so expensive, so the public officer, they have to consider public transit budget. Lastly, in more recent time, the massive amount of transportation-related data accumulated per each year is applied in modifications to the bus routes and bus headway, as well as lane routes for newly routes emergent suburbs. This slide is a decision-making support program. This can analyze bus demand per routes, and for each bus stops, it is easy to identify the number of people getting on, getting off, and occupancy in the bus. So if you look at this chart, it can show origin destination by bus stop as a network chart. It is possible to identify the bus demand by route. These are bus stops, and from here to here, circular lines thickness means the number of demand. Then, what preparations should be made in advance to implement these activities? Public transportation have to be transformed in accordance with many factors, such as the expansion and development of city scale, citizens' priority toward safety issues, newly emergent technologies in the ICT sector, as well as a new mode of transportation mobility like e-scooter, e-bike, and other personal mobility. The important thing is that the government also has a duty to protect low-income bus industry and its operators. Therefore, the best way to respond to incremental changes in the transportation environment is to have a system quickly and efficiently informing the leadership group, while also setting up a long-term policy research mechanisms. It have to be included legal and systemic issues, and finally establish a strong governance structure. In particular, public officers have to meet private business, activists, citizens, and by city bureaucrats, and could build a strong consensus. A tiny example, so when introducing an electric bus, a comprehensive review shall be prepared, such as certification of electric buses, charging spec, and systems related to electricity fares. In the case of electric buses, electricity fares are very high in many developing countries or cities. Electric fares are higher than gasoline price in cities. Electric buses will not be effective or preferred. Eventually, the city have to raise gasoline price or lower electricity fares to supply electric buses. It's not easy. So I think that public officer and relative counterparts, they have to consider introducing electric bus or other project. Finally, management of public transportation in preparation for COVID-19 situations and future consideration. Blue line is from 4 November to 10 August in 2018. Red line is 4 November 2019 to 10 August 2020. So it decreased like this, 38% or 30.5%. So this is bus operators' deficit. So this led to Seoul's subsidies. Yeah. The consequence of social distancing level up due to COVID-19 pandemic have led to a plummet in public transportation usage rate. Totally, the traffic volume decreased, but the car share increased and the bus share plummeted significantly. In result, the bus companies' deficit increased. Naturally, the amount of subsidy in Seoul has increased even more. COVID-19 has greatly affected the economy in a negative way. In the transportation sector as a whole has also been hit hard. Given that the chance for similar shocks such as COVID-19 to occur again is rather high, it may be prudent to come up with a public transportation fund that may lessen any negative financial impacts during a crisis. The application of such a fund would require as a prerequisite legal and institutional basis for carbon neutral as well. I think it would also be useful to have a phased development plan in place for future green mobility. It requires a huge cost to create a competitive public transportation city. Nevertheless, the reason for continuously upgrading public transportation infrastructure is that it's economically beneficial. If you look at this slide, when the car share is 25.9%, the energy use rate is 55.7%. Let's imagine that. If the car share will be 50%, what would be the energy consumption rate? And how much we have to pay to recover the destruction of the environment? According to the Seoul Metropolitan Government's estimation, unless Seoul prevent passenger cars increasing, they will have to pay 18.4 billion US dollar as the social cost in 2030. The Seoul Metropolitan Government's annual budget for transportation sector is 1.7 billion US dollar. The budget for public transportation is much less than this. So you need to calculate the cost of recovering the environment in your city. So I would say it's not a stretch to say that any action is not greater than the cost of improving environmental pollution in the transportation sector. Oh. Yeah. For the record, Seoul Urban Solution Agency is currently working on establishing LPTRP, means local public transportation route planning in Philippines, for Makati City to support the Philippines public utility vehicle modernization, in addition to feasibility analysis of pilot programs. Seoul Metropolitan Government, which continue to provide technical and policy-related support with many countries in order to improve carbon-neutral transportation experience. I hope to hear from interested parties in the near future. That's all for my presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. He presented us the strategies to gain competitiveness in public transportation in Seoul, including the semi-public management of bus operation and bus information system, as well as big data analysis system. And he also mentioned that the city of Seoul has the responsibility to protect the bus operator. Now I will invite Mr. Chang-sun Jang, Transport and Sustainable Mobility Lead at Global Green Growth Institute, to the podium. He will deliver a presentation with the title of Mobility Trend Reflected in Global Investment Flows. Mr. Chang-sun Jang, you have the floor.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Chang-sun Jang, who is a lead in transport and sustainable mobility in Global Green Growth Institute. Actually, Green Growth Institute is a GGGI, is a treaty-based international organization or intergovernment organization. So in GGGI, I'm in charge of the transport sector. So it is my honor to introduce our GGGI activities, and also I want to talk about the mobility trend and what kind of financial resources we can mobilize for the next trend of the transportation. So there is a three part in my presentation. So first one, maybe you know that there's over the past 3 decades, the CO2 emission from the transport sector. So, but most of the emission is from the road transportation. So as you can see, transport is a red color. It's an international and non-road and road. Actually, road transportation emitted a lot of CO2 emission. And in order to tackle the climate change and also reduce the carbon emission, in 2015, so all of the countries pledged to adopt the Paris Agreement. To achieve the Paris Agreement, also the most of countries to submit their NDC. NDC is one of the key milestones to reduce the carbon emission, also to achieve the Paris Agreement. So among the more than 85% of the country identify transport as most important source for reducing the carbon emission. So actually, they are strongly focusing on the fossil fuel and vehicle, including electrification of the transport and urban transport. So as you can see, the transport is a very big part of the climate change. Also, based on the NDC, we also analyzing our member countries' NDC. So also the 80% of the member, including transport sector, in the NDC, and they also identify which sector and what kind of action they want to do. Especially, most of transport sector actions are focusing on the road transportation, and 7 members, including the Maritime Action Plan and Transport Target as well. And 5 members, including the aviation, airplane, or air transportation as part of the NDC. And 35% of our members, among the 44 members, including the public transport as one of the transport sector action plans, such as the modernization of transport, the fleet, and 20% of members include transport system improvement, including the bus information system, bus management system, intelligent transport system. So electrification of transport sector is one of the key elements in decarbonizing the transport sector and achieving the national determined contribution. So in GGGI's members, 35% also they indicate the electrification of the transport. So that's why the GGGI focusing on the e-mobility activity in our member country. Also, my presentation slides quite focusing on the public sector, but when we are moving on to the private sector, also we can identify how it is a trend is a move on to the new trend of the electrification. So sales of the electric vehicle are expected to increase 40 million by 2040. It is representing the 35% of new light-duty vehicle sale worldwide. So maybe we can see that the electrification of transport is one of the mega trends over the world in the transport sector. So that's why we tried to support this kind of activity for our members and our developing country. So most of the manufacturers, including the Toyota and BMW and Tesla and GM and Hyundai, most of important and majority the manufacturer also they declared that their target of electrification of their fleet. So the impact of the investment and target will represent a systematic market shift over the next decades in terms of the availability and affordability of models. So, for example, the GM declared on track to meet 20 electric vehicle model target by 2002 next year. And the Volvo, Hyundai, they also declared their investment more than 80 billion in vehicle electrification by 2025. So the private sector also move on to the next the decade of the trend in the transport sector. But we have to look at the energy demand as well when we're moving on to the electrification of the transport. So additional electric generation will be required. So according to the IRENA 2020 publication, additional electrification generation will be required in Europe to meet the extra energy demand arising from the 80% share of electric vehicle in 2050. The share of the total electricity consumption from EV would increase from 0.03% in 2014, but in 2050 is almost 10%. So we have to set up some target or action plan for the securing the energy demand. In order to also secure the energy and the facility adoption of the electric vehicle over the world. So most of the diverse automakers have proposed the innovative technology solution, including solar-powered battery charging station, which could help to avoid dependence of the utility power for the electric vehicle charging, and also it can help to forced wide adoption of the photovoltaics. So this new technology is make the other also the new market. So the automaker also very closely working together with the energy sector as well. So when we are looking at the new trend of the transport technology, also the new emerging market will be allies in this sector. So we know that the electric vehicle is very important, and that we have to adopt the electric vehicle in our country. But most of our member countries, including the developing country, they are very reluctant to introducing the electric vehicle. Why? There is a very lack of resources and technical capability. So today I would like to introduce the a financial and technical mechanism under Unfccc. So under the Unfccc, there is a financial mechanism. So key financial funding the organization, maybe not just funding. We call the Green Climate Fund, GCF. So GCF is established to support the developing country to make an ambitious contribution to the United Global response to the climate change. Actually, the developing country, they want to tackle the climate change, and they want to develop some project or program. They can utilize the funding. But actually, in order to utilize this kind of funding, we have to understand what kind of mechanism and what kind of process over there. But these days, most of international the funding and resources is very emphasizing the country ownership. That's why they designated National Designated Authority, we call the NDA. So NDA is the counterpart focal point to the GSHEP. So without the permission or the objection, maybe the new project for the GSHEP may be not possible in our developing country. So that's why we have to build up the good relationship, and we have to identify the key technology needs in our member country. So we suggest to build a relationship with the NDA if you want to develop the GSHEP project. And then GSHEP invite accredited entities. Accredited entities working as an action player. So they have such as World Bank, ADB, and also the local investment, the bank or financial organization. Also, they can become the accredited entity. So based on the good relationship with the accredited entity and NDA and the local government, maybe we can develop the GSHEP, the project and program. So GSHEP providing a diverse the financing instrument, including the grant, loan, guarantee, and equity as well. So it is very difficult. Actually, from GSHEP providing the budget from 10 million to over 250 million. So that's why they want to check all of the criteria. They set up the criteria and something. So very difficult to prepare the full funding proposal. That's why they providing some kind of program, including readiness and project preparation facility and full funding proposal. So if you identify, understand the program, maybe it will be useful to approach the kind of financial resources. In terms of the readiness, the GSHEP provide up to the 1.5 million to identify the GSHEP concept. And based on the readiness program, maybe you have to develop the full funding proposal. But in order to develop the full funding proposal, actually a lot of activities and a lot of technical, some actions should be over there. So that's why GSHEP providing the project preparation facility PPF resources up to the 1.5 million to prepare the technical feasibility study report and financial model and gender analysis or something like that. Through the PPF grant, maybe you can produce the kind of project and the kind of documentation. So based on the documentation, you can develop the full funding proposal. And then e-mobility belong to the transport sector. Actually, GSHEP seek to have an impact within the 8 mitigation and adaptation result area. So adaptation, health, food, and livelihood, and infrastructure and build environment ecosystem. Also, they identify the 4 sector in mitigation result area. One is energy, transport, building, and forest. So for the transport sector, GSHEP approved 9 the projects for developing country, and they providing totally almost $530 million to the developing country government. So if you are interested, I know that many officers from the developing country visited this area, and you are very interested in the e-mobility. So I would like to say that the Green Climate Fund will be the very useful resources for the e-mobility project. And second, the financial mechanism is a global environment facility, GEF. The GEF operate with the agencies. Actually, the GEF is quite a similar process with the GSHEP. So in order to develop the GEF, the project or program, also we have to work together with agencies, including ADB, Africa Development Fund, and UNEP and UNIDO, and World Bank, and the IDB something. So they also designated some of organization as their agency. So with the agency, we can develop GEF funding, the program and project. Also GEF emphasizing the 8 sectors, One is biodiversity, chemical and waste, and climate change adaptation and mitigation, and forest, refresh water and land and ocean. So the JEF provide the funding through the 4 modalities, full-size project and medium-sized project and enabling activities and program. But compared to the GCF, JEF are providing kind of the technical assist, TA resources. So they providing the funding for the full-size project. They provide more than 2 million. So based on the 2 million, mainly we can provide regulatory framework and technical assistance and capacity building, or we can provide a small pilot project through the JEF, the funding. So JEF 7 is the period of the JEF 7 is finished this year, and then from the next year maybe we call the JEF 8. But until the JEF 7, the global e-mobility program has supported 17 and 10 country projects at the phase 1 and 2 respectively, and all regions including Africa, Asia, and Latin America and Caribbean and Central Eastern Europe. So from the JEF 7, the period, the e-mobility, one of the key area. So that's why most of country, actually the 17 and almost 27 country apply the e-mobility project to the JEF 7. Also the GGGI, also working together with UNEP and UNIDO and World Bank ADB, so we also design and develop JEF project for our member country. And yes, I introduced the financial mechanism. Also, there is a technical mechanism over there under the UNFCCC. The technical mechanism is established to support the developing countries, the capability, enhance the capability. So CTCN, the Client Fund, is among the technical mechanism, there is 2 mechanism of funding. So one is a TEC and a CTC. So TEC is a policy arm. So expert groups, they're discussing about the regulatory or policy some framework. And CTCN is an implementation arm for technical mechanisms. So CTCN provide a technical assistance fund in response to the request submitted by the developing countries via their national designated entities. For approaching the GSHEP, you have to work together with the NDA, National Designated Authority, but in order to approach the CTCN, you have to build up a relationship with NDE, the entities. Upon such request, the CTCN design and deliver a customized solution tailored for local needs. So this is a process. So based on the discussion with the NDA, the NDA submit the requesting form to CTCN Secretariat, and CTCN decide the eligibility and priority for their technical assistance resources, and they review all of the recommendation and design the response plan. Response plan is a kind of the terms of reference. So based on the terms of reference, they design the technical assistance, the project or activities. And then they selected some best the network member, and through the network member, they provide technical assistance to the developing country. So from the CTCN, we can mobilize the financial resources up to very $300,000 US. Through the funding, we can conduct the feasibility study and or the policy regulatory framework establishment. So the CTCN does not provide funding directly to the country, but instead they support the provision of the technical assistance provided by the expert on specific climate technology sectors. Also, among the approved the CTCN's TA project, 8% is from the transport sector. So this is, when you are visited their website, maybe you can identify the e-mobility is one of the very key sector for the transport. Also through CTCN provide decision-making tools, financial facilitation, and private sector engagement, very diverse activity maybe you can be supported by the CTCN. So I would like to recommend you to consider the financial mechanism and technical mechanism to facilitate the adoption of the e-mobility in your country. So I briefly introduced GGJ project, actually my project. So in order to ultimately increase the public and private sector capital flow toward the development of the green investment project and program, GGJ give priority to mainstream sustainable transport strategy in national, sub-national, regional, local, and sectoral policy and development plans. We also support developing sustainable transport project and program that applying the e-mobility solution to transport infrastructure and system investment. And last one, we also consider to strengthen and support relevant stakeholders' capacity. This is our process, development process for our member countries. So based on the analyzing the current transport situation, and we identify the technical needs, and based on the technical needs, we conceptualizing e-mobility project and program. And we design holistic supporting program, including capacity building and technical assistance and policy regulatory advice. So based on our project preparation activities, we also try to invite bilateral and multilateral cooperation organization. So actually, we are very closely with the bilateral organization. Actually, bilateral, they are providing the grant resources. So we're blending the grant resources with the loan resources from the multilateral cooperation organization, including ADB and GCF and World Bank. So, in the sector of e-mobility, our key, GGJ's key supporting activity, there's 3 activities. One is a regulatory policy support. So GGJ has been supporting the design and establish policy instrument to promote electric mobility in our member, conducting the in-depth and comprehensive review of members' relevant measures. And second, our activity is knowledge sharing. So we publish the global, the knowledge, the products. And also we providing the knowledge, we utilize the knowledge platform to provide the capacity building, or we encouraging the GGI members involved in the knowledge management networks through the virtual and offline platform. So due to the COVID-19, we are very usefully utilize the virtual capacity building program. So very efficiently we are supporting them. And also, we're providing technical support. So GGI has done an excellent job in working with project developers to render their project more financially attractive and providing technical assistance and mobilizing resources in collaboration with the government. So first one for the technical support, we conducted a pre-feasibility study for our member countries. So based on that, we design or develop the funding proposal or funding invited the funding organization. So kind of that we are working as a bridge for our member country. And in terms of the e-mobility cases, so to facilitate the adoption of the e-mobility in our member countries, we designed the 3 approaches. So the first approach is to link e-mobility solution to smart public transport infrastructure and transportation, like bus, rapid transit, BRT and ITS, or the BIS, like this. We are trying to link e-mobility to the infrastructure and system. Second, our approach is to apply the e-mobility component to relevant project. So e-mobility is kind of the new technology. So we designed the ecotourism project for our member country. And there will be the 3 or 4 components, and one of the components will be the e-mobility for the tourists and the citizens. And last, our approach is to facilitate the adoption of the e-mobility in private sector. Actually, in order to make this market more sustainable, it is very important to invite the private sector. That's why we also focusing on the private sector. So these days we set up the financial mechanism for the private sector. So we are providing very good condition of the loan or financial resources to our private sector, like we set up the line of credit facility something. So first type of the e-mobility, I tried to link the e-mobility infrastructure and system. In case of the Sri Lanka, based on the good relationship with Minister of Transport of Sri Lanka and the environment, actually from the Minister of Transport, they want to do the activity for ITS. But from the Minister of Environment, they want to introduce e-mobility, electric buses in the major bus route. So we, based on our consultation to our member governments, we design a smart eco-tourism, smart transport project. So there's 3 components. One is ITS, electric buses, and institutional development. So like this, based on our consultation, we designed the project and we conducted a pre-feasibility study. And based on the feasibility study, we support our member countries mobilize financial resources, including Korea ODA and GCF and JEF and NAMA as well. And Lao, they are very interested in the BRT. And so we suggest them to design some project for BRT line. So we're conducting the pre-feasibility study for introducing the electric buses on BRT line. And based on that, we are very closely working with the UK government to support the implementation of the new types of technology system in Laos. So we also support them to provide the policy and technical standard for the Lao government. And in Ethiopia, we are closely with the France Development Agency, AFD. So AFD, they provided some concession alone for the implementation of the BRT line in Addis Ababa. So AFD and the Addis Ababa government request us, GGI, to do the assessment of introducing the electric buses on BRT line. So we finalize our technical assistance, and based on our technical assistance, the AFD and the Ethiopia government, they consider to introduce electric buses in Ethiopia. And Rwanda also, yes, last month we finalized our pre-feasibility study, and based on that, we designed the ITMO, kind of the carbon neutral some project, and through the Minister of Infrastructure and Minister of Environment, based on the key collaboration with the government, we also designed the ITMO project. Is a carbon neutral, some international the project also we designed. Ecuador, actually the Ecuador project started last year, and the Quito government, they plan to replace all of the internal combustion engines of buses to the electric vehicle. So they very closely working with the World Bank, and then actually the World Bank, the loan program is finalized this year. And based on their activities, they want to do the new types of project, that is electric bus, the project in Quito. So that's why the World Bank and Quito approached the GGI, and they request us to do the technical assistance for the introduction of the electric buses in Quito, the city. So like this, actually, based on our technical assistance, maybe we can support them to provide the procurement documentation and the technical standard, and that we also plan to set up some e-mobility roadmap for the Quito government. So this is our the first type of e-mobility project. And second, our strategy is design the e-project. So Nepal for Pokhara metropolitan city, and Cambodia, the Cambodia Siem Reap city, and Jordan is the Petra. Actually, in three countries, we are very focusing on very meaningful location, which are one of the World Heritage Area. So for the World Heritage Area, also we designed the ecotourism project for three countries. So for the country, we conducting the pre-feasibility study. Also, we support them to mobilize financial resources, or we also providing capacity building as well. So through our activities, we want to do first the adoption of the electric mobility in our member country, as well as protect the environment. And last, the approach is to set up the financial mechanism for Philippines and Cambodia. We support the government to set up the line of credit facility, the program. That it would be the very good loan program for the private sector. So if someone wants to buy the electric vehicle or electric motorbike, they can approach the designated bank and they can get the very low interest the loan for their electric mobility. Like this, we are supporting our member country. So we are focusing on the e-scooter and charging infrastructure, electric buses and electric jeepney and IT system and BRT, etc. And all of the project and support the program is based on their NDC. If their NDC is quite close to our activity, maybe we can support our member country to achieve their NDC. So GGI has actively support transport implementation in more than 17 member countries, supporting them in the transition of their transport sector to sustainable mode, including e-mobility and non-motorized transportation. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chang. Now, I'd like to open the floor for our audience. If you have any questions, you can raise your hand if you're at the venue, or you can raise your hand if you would like to weigh in. Also, if you are connected through Zoom, you can also write your question in the chat box or click the raise hand button. I believe we have a question from the Zoom. Mr. Janice.
Hello. I hope you guys can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for a very informative presentation. So I was wondering, since we were talking more about electric vehicles and shifting the transportation mode from fossil fuel-based electric cars and buses to electrical cars and buses. So I was wondering, most of these electrical cars or vehicles, they're based on lithium batteries, right? So when we are mining for lithium, it emits a lot of greenhouse gases, if I'm not mistaken. So I was wondering, when you consider the life cycle cost of electrical vehicles per person driving one electric car, will it still be carbon efficient?
Can anyone answer to the question? So his question was that electric vehicle requires lithium batteries, and mining for lithium requires a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. So if one drives an electric vehicle, does that mean that he or she drives an eco-friendly vehicle? The microphone is available at the back. Our experts are discussing.
I thank you very much for your question, Janice. That is very useful. And yeah, actually, electric vehicle is, as I said, is one of is a mega trend in the transport sector to try, transfer the internal combustion engine to the electric vehicle. But maybe you can see that, actually, that is one of our concern. And when we are looking at the life cycle, all of the impact assessment, maybe we cannot say that electric the vehicle would be the much better than the internal combustion engine or not. But that's why when maybe there will be the more some innovative some solutions should be we are develop or something. But actually, that's why when we are support our member country or identify the key technical some sector or area, we are looking at the grid factor as well. The grid factor meaning is the energy source where is it from. So actually, we are quite focusing on the some country where is very fluent renewable energy sources over there. So if there is a grid factor is very nice for the country, maybe the life cycle assessment for the electric vehicle would be much better. But in terms of the the very low grid factor, the country maybe we cannot say that the electrification would be the best solution for the country or not. So yeah, so these days we can say that the electrification of the transport is the best solution for the transport sector. Yeah, that is true. But in order to make it more perfect, maybe we have to see the energy sector as well. So how to link the energy sector to the transport? Maybe that would be one of the some area we have to do, provide some best solution. I hope my question.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for your answer. Like, I just have one follow-up question. And since I live in Suwon in South Korea, I was wondering like whether changing the current transportation mode to electrical cars is the best option for Korea, because I am assuming that the power grid is getting more and more power from nuclear fossil, right? So if we increase the nuclear energy share, that means we have more and more nuclear residual garbage or like things to dispose of, and that's a big problem in Korea as well. So, yeah.
Our experts are discussing to provide the perfect answer.
Yes. Actually, yes. I'm not working for the Korean government, so I'm working for the international
Mr.
organizations.
Chang Sun-jang, can you please stand up and look at the camera, please?
Okay, from the next time will be much better. So Korea also they set up the electric mobility target for fostering the adoption of the electric vehicle in South Korea. So, but actually we cannot say that it is a major the market. Maybe we cannot say that. So it is a kind of the pilot. So based on the pilot, they want to get more data through our pilot some process. And based on the pilot process, maybe they will develop their policy, regulatory framework or policy something as well. So based on that, maybe they will set up more appropriate some regulatory framework for the electric vehicle. I believe that. So that is my answer.
Thank you. We also have a question from Ralph at the venue. Ralph, if you can please stand up and look at the camera behind. Thank you.
Hello. First of all, thank you very much for a wonderful lecture and workshop. It's about the supply chain of the resources or the materials used for the manufacture of electric vehicles or batteries. So how does South Korea as a government secure resources or minerals? I mean, is South Korea government prepared for some sort of like battery recycling facility, or because we want to promote circularity. So do we have this kind of researches or current industries that promote circularity of resources, minerals, or battery materials, so as to, so as to alleviate the climate change effects?
Thank you. Can any experts can answer to the question?
Hello?
So the question was that do South Korean government has the industry or resources for recycling the electric vehicle batteries and to make it more circular?
There, as far as I know, so we are thinking about the wasted the battery industry, but still the market of the electric vehicle is not that big. So from now on, the Korean government is thinking about how to use the waste battery, but one of the option to how to use the waste battery is the agricultural machine that we can use the waste battery. Also the street light, also we can use the waste battery. So some options how to use the waste battery, and we are thinking about that. Maybe the battery market will be the big market in the future. So from now on, we have to think about that, how to deal with the waste battery.
Thank you. We have also a question from Sira and Farida as well.
Hello, I'm Sierra. I'm an assistant professor at SUNY Korea. And I just had a question. Thank you for your presentations. I think that it was quite clear that what the role of the government is with the respective agencies that are represented here today, and also even some of the roles of the government, the agencies, the research institutes. And you've touched on the role of the private sector in some of your lectures, but could you give a little bit more detail as to what further role you expect the companies to play, especially in terms of making these programs more economically viable for the long term?
Thank you, Professor. So, yeah, actually, the private sector is very important. That's why GGI, also international organization, also support our member countries' government and private sector. But actually, from the public sector, maybe directly we can provide the funding or financial resources. So that's why our first approach is to set up some regulatory framework for our member government. So we support them to set up their regulatory framework and set up their target. So if there is some target for the electric mobility, maybe the private sector would be interested, and they are very they coming into the market. So this is one of our strategy. And second strategy, we directly support the bank or financial mechanism or the organization. So we support them to set up financial process or the loan instrument for them. And then if they are set up the very good condition of the financial resources in their bank, the process instrument, maybe the private sector, maybe the individual user, maybe they can easily approach the financial mechanism for their electric mobility. So that is one of also the strategy. So actually, the most of electric mobility, the project is a public transportation, some project and program in our member country. But maybe the next the year, maybe we will support the government to and also support and facilitate the participation of the private sector in this area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Additionally, the comment about that, in order the private sector, the for private sector in the penetrating the market, basically we need to more than 5% of the total number of vehicles. So in Jeju Island, I think that almost the 4% or 5% of electric vehicles, the total number of vehicles. So in order to make the private sector in the participate into the market, at least we need the 5% of the electric vehicle among of the total vehicles. So there is the additional comment on that.
We also had a question from Farida.
Thank you for the time. My name is Farida. I have one question for Mr. Sujin Kim about the Seoul Urban Solution Agency. I'm curious about how the government and the public office engage the private operators pass in Seoul, because in my country there are still a lot of problem to handle the private operator pass, and how the public make the payment to the private operators. Maybe it's like per kilometer or by another system. Is it clear? Thank you for the time. And the second question for the Mr. Chang Soon Chang from the Mobility Transaffected. I just have a simple question. Is it possible to make the proposal for the non-member country of GGI or not? Thank you.
So it's a long story, but in summary, Seoul Metropolitan Government manage operators and private company. So they, Seoul Metropolitan Government scored point annually. So company A violate and employee of driver number and routes keeping, and so kindness of driver, so for public users and so on. So they scored and penalty other company, and Seoul Metropolitan Government calculate on their own basic deficit annually. So summation, in summary, they will give the price.
Thank you for your question. So can I ask you, we are from Indonesia, yet Indonesia is a member country, so we cannot say something, but actually we are very actively working with the Indonesian government. So our local staff over there is more than 60 members there. And regarding your question, our support for our non-member country, so yes, definitely we are providing our technical assistance and a diverse set of our supporting program. So actually, through our support, we want to expand our membership globally. So in particular, we these days we establish some kind of support program, project identification facility. So through the program, we support our potential member country to identify their green growth some activity or potential some sustainable project and program. So beside the PIF, also we are diverse some program over there. So we are very happy to work together with our potential member country. Thank you.
Yes, we have a question from Faruqi.
So in Indonesia, basically bus is operated the private sector, right? The bus Seoul City, he already explained the Seoul City adopted the combination and the private and the public sector. So Seoul City has a right to designate the operation route, and that's why if there is deficit, the Seoul City that provide the subsidies to the private sector. That's why the Seoul City has the power or right to designate the route operation, even though there would be some deficit. Yeah, you're right. But as you mentioned, annually, calculated in detail the how many the deficit for each the private company. After that, after calculating in detail, the Seoul City provide the.
Thank you very much. My name is Umar. I am an assistant professor in Jeju National University. First of all, I am very thankful to the organizers to invite me for the participation in this workshop. And then I have a comment and also a sort of question, as I belong to the sort of research and development related to the batteries and this type of stuff. So all the members, they have given very good presentation, and they discuss about the infrastructure for e-mobility, like charging facilities for the electric vehicles and this type of things. As we all know that there is a great paradigm shift in the field of electronics. And now the academia, or for example, my university, we are working on the self-powered devices. And soon there will be like self-powered vehicles. So if our policymakers, how much they know about this, that for example, if you are investing like hundreds of millions for making the infrastructure for the recharging the cars, and after 5 years there will be self-powered cars. So how much consideration or time you are giving to this aspect? Because in coming days or maybe in coming years, there will be self-powered cars. And I also want to know that how much research and development funds are available or our common institutes are giving to the researchers to investigate and to develop such type of vehicles. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. So, yeah, actually, the innovation and the new technology is one of the key solutions for the advancing the new area. So that's why these days we are very narrowly talking about the infrastructure or modality something, but actually it's for making all of this market and all of the technology sustainable. Actually, we need to provide and we need to invest more R&D some activities. So that's why the KOTI, the Korea, the Transport Institute, they are the research institution. So Korea government, they are mobilizing more than 20 million for the R&D sector. So they set up the 25 research institutions, and then each institution, they are quite doing the research activity to produce and provide some new type of technology and innovative technology. So yes, the Korean government very actively support that kind of one. So also from our side, international organization, also we are supporting our member country to set up their research institution development as well, because of in order to get the new technology, if there is no capacity, maybe it is not possible to obtain the actual the technology. So that's why we also support our member country to set up their enhance the capacity building. Also, they try to make some kind of research institution as well.
Yeah, as you mentioned, we are doing the various R&D. If I raise one example of R&D, the project, so our institute, the Korea Transport Institute, is located in Daejeon City. So we developed the autonomous the bus transport. So without driver, the bus can operate along the road. So including this kind of the R&D project, we are doing the e-mobility related R&D, also oversees the R&D project.
We also had a question from Kate. I think that should be our last question before the coffee break. Here.
Thank you, and thank you for giving me time to ask the final question. Thank you for all the speakers for the very interesting presentations and a very lively Q&A discussion. So my name is Kate, and I'm working for a Korean sustainability NGO focusing on steel sector decarbonization. So I also have a question about the supply chain emissions. So today we talked a lot about these global trends that are reflected both in the government policy, but also the private sector, and that electrification is a major trend that you can see across both private sector and public policy. However, the other thing that you can see, for example, with automotives, they're increasingly paying attention to addressing supply chain emissions. So this is related to, of course, EV battery emissions, but also things like steel production, which is linked to the emissions made by the steel industry. And so my question was, were there any cases where the government policy in mobility was addressing these supply chain emissions? Either, it could be to any of the speakers, so GGGI's regional programs, or cases in Korea, or within Seoul specifically. So I'd be very curious to hear more. Thank you.
Thank you.
So my understanding is that in order to increase the vehicle, the Korean government, what kind of action the Korean government is taking? Your question is right? No?
Specifically no. In the steel making manufacturer.
It doesn't have to be necessarily steel, but supply chain. So when you make the electric vehicles, when you make the battery, emissions are produced. This is similar to mining, minerals production, the policy.
Yeah, so your question is related to the industry aspect.
Why is it separate?
Yeah, to be frank with you, I am not involved in the industry factor, so I'm sorry, but I cannot give the right answer to you. But if you have any ideas, try the industry.
This is a small case of Seoul. When people get electric car, SMG assist some rate discount, so they can get discount rate when they park and when they pass over in tunnel, congestion price, and so on. So this is a tiny scale of supply chain. Yeah.
Thank you, Kate. Yes, Kate, a very serious question. It's very hard to answer you, but actually, the facilitating the adoption of the e-mobility in Korea, maybe it is not that difficult because of all of the industry already exists, and then if they are cooperate, maybe that would be possible. So that's why I think the Korean government, they set up that there's some target to link the industry, the working together. So maybe that would be one of the key, I don't know, maybe research something activity. So from my experience, actually I'm very closely working with the Rwanda government, but they are very eager to introduction of the electric mobility. But my concern is how can make it more possible and how it is impact on their economy situation because of there is no any manufacturer, even they really want to do the e-mobility in their country. So that's why we support the government to set up the investment, the financial incentive for the industry, kind of the manufacturer or something. So why? Because they have to go into the Rwanda. So there is one of some support the point. And in terms of some more similar to the Korea, our member country, we are set up our incentive scheme. So first stage is quite focusing on the financial incentive. And second stage is a non-financial incentives. Because of the first incentive, financial incentive is very useful to attract the private sector. But there is a very limited budget for the government. So that's why the incentive scheme should be changed from the financial to the non-financial to invite some relevant industry to the sector. So there is some of our target, but actually it's very difficult from the international organization. So our key support is to provide a consultation to the government, or sometimes we are publish the global product for the government.
Thank you. The first half of today's session is finished, but we have a panel discussion later today. We will have 10 minutes break, but when we come back, we will continue with the panel discussion. The session will resume at 5:13 in 10 minutes time. Also, we prepared cookies at the back, so help yourself. Thank you. The session will resume soon. Please be seated. Now I expect everyone to be more refreshed. For the remaining hour, we will invite 4 speakers to the floor for the panel discussion first, and then we will have a plenary session so that participants can join in. Now I'd like to open the floor to our panel speakers, so please, I'd like to invite you to the podium, yes. So we have invited 3 speakers plus 1 more speaker, Ms. Jasmine Kim. She joined as one of our panelists who will make a presentation on the final session on Friday. Since our participants have not yet listened to your presentation, would you open the discussion by introducing the concept of co-control and co-benefit in the transportation sector?
Hello, my name is Jasmine Kim. I'm the program manager at the East Asia Cleaner Cities Network. So I would like to begin the discussion by going over the definition of co-benefits and co-control. I would like to begin by explaining that air pollution and climate change are fundamentally interconnected in the sense that air pollutants emission sources and climate change emission sources are often common, which includes emissions from vehicle, power generation, industries, and etc. And these air pollutants not only share common emission sources, but they mutually affect each other as well. For instance, greenhouse gases can increase the level of ground level ozone, which is one of the 6 criteria pollutants defined by WHO. On the other hand, black carbons, which are air pollutants, can also impact short-term climate change. And therefore, they're also called short-lived climate pollutants as well. So because of this close relationship between 2 emissions, researchers have found that reduction measures aim to reduce air pollutants and reduction measures aim to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. They can actually benefit each other if they are designed properly. And this kind of two-way interaction is also a very impactful way to attract attention from policymakers in terms of, especially from the climate action perspective. Often politicians are a little bit reluctant to proceed measures in that area because the benefits are not yield until much later on. But once they realize that climate actions can also yield air quality benefits, then it gives them a sense of incentives to implement strong climate actions. In this sense, so this kind of two-way interact benefits are called co-benefits. And in that sense, co-control measures are basically measures or integrated planning of climate and clean air actions, which seeks to maximize, or which seeks to identify measures that maximizes benefits in both areas. And I think most importantly, avoid trade-offs. So for instance, if these measures are not carefully integrated, and if they are implemented separately without having due regard to each other, it could actually have adverse effects. So for instance, if the local government tries to transition their public trans buses from diesel to natural or biogas, it could help them to reduce carbon dioxide. But on the other hand, it may actually make air pollutants worse. So integrating planning it's very important, not only because it saves time and cost, but also it can have it can be very useful in identifying potential trade-offs. I do want to mention that when we think about integrated planning, it doesn't necessarily mean that the two actions have to be merged, but it's just that in the planning of air quality and climate actions, the local governments or the departments that are responsible for each will take into consideration what kind of impact it will have on each other. And another factor about co-control is, I believe the most challenging aspect of this kind of integrated planning, which are co-control measures. It's about prioritizing actions. You also have to think about not only maximizing benefits in air quality and climate action, but it's also important to think how these integrated actions will impact other development goals, such as alleviating poverty or job creation or energy efficiency and things like that. Yeah, I think I will leave it at that for the definition of co-benefits and co-control. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I believe the co-benefits can be further highlighted in the NDCs as well. Mr. Chang San-jang, you mentioned the NDCs of the member countries of the GGGI in your presentation, and you also introduced the global technological and financial mechanism. Do you think there are global mechanisms that offer that can help strengthen the linkage between mitigation and air quality? And if there are some global mechanisms, what are they?
Thank you very much for your question. Yes, NDC is one of the mechanisms to all of the member countries to achieve the Paris Agreement, also to tackle the climate change. Also, under the UNFCCC, they are declared some significant target to the reduction of the temperature is 2 degrees Celsius something. So yes, actually it is not possible without any support or any cooperation among the country. So because of they understand the situation, all of the country, they regularly have a discussion, and then they try to find out some of the solution. And among the discussion, they found out there's some key mechanism. There is a financial mechanism and technical mechanism. So the major role of the financial mechanism is to provide the financial resources to the countries where does need some financial resources to do some climate action. So under the UNFCCC and under the financial mechanism, they set up the Green Climate Fund. Green Climate Fund, they providing the financial resources to the mitigation and adaptation oriented project and program. So actually, we cannot say that only through the financial mechanism. Maybe we cannot say that all of the the issue arise from the climate change. Maybe not possible to sort out all of the issue. But through the financial mechanism, maybe we can show the model of the climate change action. So where there is no any financial resources. So through the Green Climate Fund action, yeah, we can show that if you are investing some of area or some of sector, maybe you can achieve some good results for the climate change and for your NDC something. So, but Green Climate Fund, actually we can, I easily say you can approach the Green Climate Fund or some things, but actually very difficult. And then Green Climate Fund, they identify some key project and program that is should be linking to their NDC. So the NDC meaning is there is a country ownership. So actually the project or program, if the project program is driven by the country and with their ownership, maybe the Green Climate Fund, they can, there is some good criteria for mobilizing their resources for the country. So in this meaning, I think the financial mechanism would be very good tool for the developing country to achieve the carbon neutral society and tackling the climate change. Also, beside the financial resources, also it is very essential to enhance the capacity. Actually, if we are freely provide some financial resources, maybe it would be not possible to bring out the good result. That's why the Unfccc set up the technical mechanism. So major role of the technical mechanism provide the technical assistance to the country who want to tackle the climate change and reduce carbon emission. So in this line, I think the two mechanisms. Actually it is kind of the beginning stage of the two mechanisms operating. So, but if they are getting the more experience in this sector, and then maybe two mechanisms would be the very good, useful tool to support the member to countries achieve the NDC and to bring out the more carbon neutral society in developing country and developed country as well.
Thank you. Dr. Hoon-Ki Lee, I'd like to turn to you now. The transitioning process in the transportation sector is, as you explained, quite complex because it involves technological innovation, ecosystem innovation, and institutional innovation. But if a local government has a will to transform its road system, how would you suggest the local government to adapt to the transitioning process? Because the transitioning process usually is governed by the local central government.
Okay. Today, I focused on the nationwide, the strategic, how to reduce the carbon emissions, especially from the road transport. So, but the urban transport, the situation is a little bit different from nationwide transport. For example, the Korean government, in terms of nationwide transport, the Korean government put more the stress on how to shift from the IC vehicles to zero emission vehicles. But in urban transport, there are three options. One is avoid, second, shift, third is incentive, I think. So avoid means to stop their using the private vehicles. So the second shift means from the private vehicles to public transport. So as you know, the Seoul City has their plan to introduce high-speed train in order to shift the private car users to the public transport. So the shift, the options can contribute to reduction of the carbon emission as well. And the third is incentive. Likewise, the Korean government provided financial subsidy to the electric vehicle users. Also, the local government provided the subsidy to the users when they purchase the electric vehicles. So basically, the avoid, shift, incentive is the main factors to reduce the carbon emissions. So options for the urban transport is a little bit different from nationwide transport. So when you think about urban transport, maybe you have the different options when you want to reduce the carbon emissions.
Thank you. Mr. Soo-Jin Kim, it seems that we have an increasing share of informal transportation like e-scooter and motorcycle in Korea, given the fast growth of delivery business. I believe now is the time that we need to think about the harmonization of different transportation modes. What kinds of insight can you share with us on this issue?
Yeah, thank you for your asking. I'd like to emphasize that hierarchy there is a hierarchy on the road, like this expressway, highway, main arterial road, sub-arterial road, collection road. It can be applied the same to transportation modes, such as bullet train and train, express bus, or interregional bus, arterial trunking bus, and small minimal bus. So currently there is an issue in Seoul in the combined bicycle and pedestrian road. So basically they have to separate physically, but it depends on budget, new budget. So in case of Seoul, they came up with road diet for road diet and new micro mobility only lane. So it's important to think that arranging road, arranging mode, it's very important to think. So if we arrange mode and road, so it can be harmonized.
Okay, thank you. I have one more question for Jasmine Kim. Since our other speakers have talked about public transportation and private vehicle, do you think there are ways that we can achieve co-benefits in both public transportation and private vehicle?
Thank you for the question. So today, the majority of the presentation was based on electrification and improving transport, which is really important. But I think it is equally important to remember that building a sustainable transport is not just, it doesn't end in electrification, but cities have to think in a much broader sense in terms of building a city, not only with clean air, but that is safe to walk and cycle, and also a city that people have access to affordable zero-emission transport and zero-emission energy. So in that sense, as a city network, we look at a lot of best case studies around the world to see what works and what doesn't. And based on our research, the global trend is that the cities are transitioning from car-centered city into people-oriented cities. Mr. Sujin Kim today also mentioned that SMG's policy direction is also pedestrian and people-based city as well. So in that sense, the biggest challenge of transitioning from car-centered to people-oriented city is that many departments have to work together. This integration has to happen not only within the transport department, but across many different policy domains, including transport, health, environment, and economic development. So in that sense, I would like to emphasize the importance of coordinating collaboration and stakeholder engagement, not only within departments, but across departments and across sectors, so public and private. And a couple of key takeaways in successfully integrating clean air and climate actions for improving public transport and private vehicles. Based on our research, it is critical to have political support from high-level authorities, if possible from the president or at the mayor level, to ensure that departments are incentivized by working together. A lot of cities that we speak with, they have difficult time interacting with other departments, even if they work in the same building and all that. But in terms of sharing data, information, and aligning policy, and getting each other involved in the integrated planning. So it's important that we build that kind of environment where public officials feel incentivized to interact with each other, and they are in that working environment where it encourages such interaction. And another key driver would be, it's similar, but joint governance across not only national level, but also international level. So as a city network, we engage with cities to share best practices and also to coordinate stakeholder engagement among the national and city level. So it's, and we do that through city-to-city engagement or peer-to-peer review and things like that. So it's also important for local cities to engage with international networks to get the help or the support that they need. And also, I would like to mention, like I said, improving transportation, it's beyond transportation, but it also expands to urban development. So if you think about it, people are so used to building cities around cars. And transitioning to a people-centered city, you really have to think outside of your box. And it's about reprioritizing the function of the streets. So it's, in a sense, just as much of a political issue as much as it is a technical issue. So in that sense, I think stakeholder engagement, especially with the public, is very important. We need to understand what the needs are of the public, how they like to interact with the streets, and what would encourage them to use public transportation more and leave their cars at home. And so there is really no one-size-fits-all policy for this. Each public officials have to look into the local context through surveys and different types of research to really understand the needs of their local community, to understand how their streets and their public system can be redesigned so that people will leave their cars at home and will be more encouraged to take public transportation. One of the case studies that I will share on Friday, UK, United Kingdom, is known for sort of being creative in their policy making. And I've had the privilege of working with the UK government in the past. And similar to this situation, what they have done is they have actually created a separate department within their transport department, or separate division, I should say, just to dedicate on innovative thinking. So they have different expertise, examining what kind of technical expertise they have internally, but also externally, what kind of expertise are available for them to really re-innovate their cities and to redesign their streets. So in conclusion, I think in order to improve public transportation, ultimately what we are trying to do is motivate people to not take their cars, to use public transportation, and if, when needed, transition current fossil fuel vehicles to electrification. So I just want to close by saying that this is a holistic approach. It's not just a technical one, but really changing behaviors of the citizens and the way the cities design their streets, and just prioritizing what we are used to into something new to save our planet ultimately. Great, thank you.
Thank you. I have one final question, but before tossing my question to the panelists, I'd like to open the floor. If anyone here has a question, you can raise your hand. Olga?
Good afternoon. I'm Olga, Associate Professor of Korea University of Technology and Education. And this is my first experience of participation in such kind of workshop and conference. So thanks a lot for your presentations and the final panel discussion. So today we listen a lot about the different strategic perspectives and aspects of the future directions in the electric vehicles and transportation area. So, and I'm sure that for co-control, cooperation, and engagement of all groups of the industry to participate in such kind of strategies, we need to arrange the training programs. And you mentioned that there are a lot of different training programs in this area. So I wonder about the Korean experience. What kind of, could you give some more examples? What kind of training programs are provided by different organizations, government structures, associations? For whom are they provided? So who are the strategic interested groups? And if there is any competence model, maybe, within these training programs. Yeah, thank you.
So the question, if I may summarize, was the necessity of having all stakeholders together is understandable, but it requires trainings and education for the stakeholders. But she wondered if there are any cases in Korea that you can introduce to her, like what kind of institutions were participating in these training sessions, who were the targets, and like how did it go?
In my case, I have been involved in overseas project and through the ODA funding and the using fundings. So to developing countries, we prepared the various training programs. Of course, topic varies according to the developing country's situation. So now I am involved in the Mongolian railway project. So the railway project can contribute to reduction of the carbon emission, the shifting from the private car to the railway transport. So the training, the project will continue for 3 years, and we have a plan to hold the training, the programs for Mongolian officials and the Mongolian experts. So training program can provide the Mongolian official to face to know how the Korean railway technology and the railway policy have developed and that help the Mongolian officials to make their railway strategy in their own countries. So in that sense, the program, the training program, I'm sure that can help the Mongolian officials and the Mongolian experts to develop their own strategy, railway strategy, and develop their ownership of their plans. So absolutely, I'm sure the training program can help their capability, and it based on my experience, the training, the program should be well organized, and then absolutely they can help the Mongolian participant the capability. So Yeah, my comment is, in conclusion, the training, the program, always involved in the overseas project, and which could help the participant to develop their capability.
Do we have any other panelists who would like to add on?
So the GGI also provide this capacity building program to our member country. So actually our target is a decision maker from the government side. So for the government, the officers, we are mainly providing how to set up their regulatory and policy framework for the country. Sometimes we are also providing their capacity to design the roadmap and action plan and guideline. That is one of the key our activity for our member government officers from the capacity building program. And second, the target is for the expert group. So for the expert group, even we can do, but actually we tried to invite another expert group from the more best model country. So we invited the expert to our member country, and we designed a 2 or 3 days capacity building program, and then we provide the more focused specific technical capacity building program to the expert group. And also we tried to public awareness, because even everybody know about the key technologies, advantage or benefit, but if the citizen or the people do not like or do not understand the technology, maybe the government or politician cannot decide to introduce that kind of technology. So that's why we support our member countries, the public awareness, like the promotion, or sometimes we go to the university or school to provide some lecture. So this kind of activity we are doing for our member country. Actually, for the Korea, actually there is a very good financial resources for the capacity building. Capacity building program is called Korea Knowledge Sharing Program, KSP. So this program is designed by, actually operated under the KDI, Korea Development Institute, and Korea Action Bank. So maybe if you're interested in that kind of activity, maybe through this kind of program, maybe there will be the good the capacity building program you can get and supported by the Korean government. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe we had another question from the floor. Muhammad first.
My name is Meshab Shiraz. I am a doctoral student. I have one question related to some research background. As we know that in automobile, in every car have HFC 134, a hydrofluorocarbon. This is the most powerful greenhouse gas. So I'm curious, any Korean government or automobile industries are working on to remove the HFC 134A, and they can use some other air conditioning gas. Because I worked on, I did pyrolysis technique. I converted HFC 134A into eco-friendly gas, which is the trifluoroethylene gas, so which can use our air conditioning gas. Because HFC 134A have very high global warming potential, as well as the lifetime span is very high, is almost 14 years. So when any car got accident or any during repairing of the air conditioning, so the gas can leak into atmosphere. So it is almost 40 to 50% globally emission is HFC 134A, and it is causing greenhouse gas, and it is causing global warming. So my question is, do you have any strategy about this one to control HFC 134A or introduce new gas? Thank you.
Do we have a mitigation policies targeting HFC in Korea? Is that your question? So your question was, does the Korean government has any policies to mitigate? Okay.
So the government, as I said, is that we are quite the new kind of the trend or new kind of the situation in the climate change. So that's why Korean government also they set up their some target and set up their regulation or set up their policies. So these days, I think it's a very early stage of the climate change or something. So they are quite focusing on the some of area where there is a very huge impact or something. But maybe in the future, I believe that the kind of the sector or area should be, or the Korean government also consider how to tackle or how to respond to the issue as well. Yeah, I believe that. Yeah.
This is just only personally my opinion. People tend to underestimate when they can calculate the amount of greenhouse gas emission. Normally, greenhouse gas is more made more uphill than downhill, and it depends on road condition. So increasing more winter than summer. So the vehicle increase speed. So for example, from 10 km per hour to 20 km per hour, from 20 km per hour to 30 km per hour, the amount of emissions making more when they accelerate. So we have to accurately calculate it. But normally we calculate the reduction traffic volume, multiply the reduction traffic volume by emission factor. So it is underestimated. So if we accurately calculate, we have to construct the sensor or detector so we can detect accurate amount of emissions. So in some link, so we installed a detector. It can detect greenhouse gas emission.
I see there is a comment on the chat box from Janice. HFC was used to phase out CFC, which was destroying O3. I think at the time, the priority was to phase out CFC first. So as far as he knows, industry standard is still HFC. So thank you for the question. Do we have another question from, I'd like to give Has.
Yes, thank you so much. First of all, congratulations to UNITAR CIPL for this successful program. And I am Hashim Khan, Sohan University Master of Civil Society Leadership. My question is to Ma'am Jasmine. As you mentioned, your UK experience public habit from private transport to the public transport. So I believe, if you don't mind, the Korea's other name is cheapest cars. Like cars are everywhere in Korea. So if I share today's experience, I just took 2 hours instead of 30 minutes from Suwon to Gimpo Airport. Everywhere were called due to the heavy traffic. So beside of the e-vehicles or high technology, so do you think the public interest, public habits should be transferred from private transport to the public transport? Like instead of using the individual transports, they should to use the public transport. So is it possible to develop this habit in Korea, the Korean peoples, beside of this advanced technology? Yes.
If I understood you correctly, so you said you had to travel like 3 times further because you had to take public transportation, correct? Okay, so your question was, despite some discomfort, what are some of the ways to encourage people to leave their cars? Is it correct? Is it your question? Okay. One of the things that other cities are trying is reinventing people's experience in the streets. So, I mean, I think first of all, improving transportation network would be number one to make. I'm not sure. I think in your case, that was the only option that you had in order to get here, which means that in that area, they probably need to improve network to make access to locations where it has less public transportation system. So I think improving the network of the transport would be number one. Number two would be, I've been driving since I was 16, so I've been driving for 25 years, and one thing that I've realized is it's just the hassle of just sort of like transferring one to another transfer and things like that. But one of the ways to incentivize such sort of a detour in travel is to reinvent their experience in the streets. So for instance, if I have to, I could have driven 30 minutes to get from point A to point B, but if I were to take public transportation, I would have to walk extra 15 minutes here and there when I transfer. But between those 15 minutes, if I could go through a park instead of busy streets, or if I could go through some kind of commercial area where I can do some shopping on my way to my destination, I think that would incentivize me to spend more time in the streets. And that's actually sort of what I mentioned earlier about linking this integrated planning with other domains of other policy domains, including economic development, in the sense that improving such experiences in the streets can benefit local businesses. So having more people out in the streets there tend to look around more and tend to shop a little more. So it's a win-win situation for both the pedestrians and the local businesses. So I think some people would prefer cars regardless of different incentives for taking public transportation, but just providing them with a pleasant experience while they're taking public transportation. And I think that's where you have to be have to be innovative. But at the same time, I think this challenge that we're facing right now is also an opportunity for urban developers to think more environmental friendly and to think what could be more pleasant and healthier for their citizens.
Thank you. And unfortunately, we have used up the time allocated for us today, so it's time to wrap up today's session. Although we were not able to invite everyone to the venue, I believe the discussions and questions created the added value to the online and in-person interaction. Thank you, everyone, for your contribution. Well, this is the end of today's session. I look forward to meeting you all again for Friday's presentation. Thank you and bye. And this is a housekeeping rule announcement for the participant at the venue. We are having a welcome dinner at Buyang Hotel at 6:30. The dining room is called Diamond. You can find your seat when you go there, so you can continue networking here and then follow our staff's direction to find the dining room at the hotel. I will meet you all later for the welcome dinner. Thank you.